Hello, my name is Nathaniel Haywood, and this is my media project for Communications 532. I will be discussing Chapter 9, which has an emphasis on radio broadcasting. So, let's get started. If you click to the next slide, you will see a preview of the things we'll be discussing: an introduction, background, recent developments, current status, and my final question for you guys at the end. So our introduction. If you click on the next slide, introduction. There are three reasons the book provides to study radio broadcasting. The first of which is it's free and easy to use. No subscription required, which is why it's important. In this day and age, whatever is the most cost efficient may in fact be the most efficient. And for those who need to get information out, it's, costliness makes the most sense to do with the radio. There are billions of AM and FM receivers across the globe. AM is amplitude modulation, and FM is frequency modulation. We will discuss those further on in the presentation. But again, billions of receivers across the globe, which means it is difficult to find a spot where there is no radio frequency at all, which is good. Its reach was one of the broadest of any means of communication. And the final reason the book provided is that radio technology plays a major role in communications around the world for populations in political, economic, and social transition. So when there's something happening in a different country, even our own country, the more means of communication that we can get it out to to those who may not have access to a video or access to a television screen or can't find a newspaper anywhere. For those who just have a radio, it's imperative that we get the information out through radio, which is why it is something that is important to study. Um, the next slide provides a bit of information regarding its history. Its experience, its golden age, radio did in the 30s and 40s, according to the textbook. It is the medium for live entertainment and news broadcasts during that time period. However, after World War II, there was an enthusiastic emphasis of television, and ever since then, radio was essentially trying to catch up to television. Television can tap into the audio and visual. Radio only has the audio, and that was something that propelled radio to look for more innovative ways to communicate and get their content to listeners. Um, as I mentioned, the emphasis of technology and of television propelled radio to improve and to innovate and to catch up per se. Go on the next slide. The three things that essentially redefined radio. Radio, of course, is not what it once was, um, but now there are so many other options to obtain, the signals and the content radio provides. One of which is satellite, satellite delivered audio options. The primary horse in that race is Sirius XM. There's also streaming audio options. And for those who don't know what streaming audio options means, it's your Pandoras and your Spotify's, essentially ways to stream audio. And audio downloads, where you can just download your music, download your podcasts, download whatever it is that you would like to listen to. You can do that. You can do all of those three in lieu of listening to your traditional AM and FM stations. Um, so, despite all of that, how has radio been able to maintain its relevancy over the years? And these are the few reasons that the textbook provided regarding that. I mean, how in the world can you compete with something that gives you whatever you want whenever you want it? Yet radio has, for the most part, done a good job in staying afloat in this kind of time. One of the reasons, it's simple usage. As we mentioned, you just need a radio of any sort to access it. It reaches billions of listeners worldwide. According to the textbook, there's only a few billion people on this planet, and so that's a good portion of humanity that it has reached to. Um, 93% of the U.S. population have access to radio. Um, Also, it does not require a smart device or streaming bandwidth, which is helpful in the cost department, both a phone, smartphone, and bandwidth cost. And for those who can afford neither, you can still access radio content. It's accessible through various means, ranging from a tablet to your vehicle. Tablet, smartphone, iPod, your car, If you have Kindle, you can have one of those. There's so many different ways to access radio, which helped it, maintain relevancy over the years. In areas with low per capita income or low literacy rates, radio is arguably the most important means of communication at that point, because for those who can't afford television, who can't afford computers or laptops, or can't afford the internet or cable, or can't find a news or can't read a newspaper, the only thing that's left is radio. And for the areas who can't afford television or computers or online access, for those who can't read the paper, radio is all that remains. Um, and again, innovation and update technology have also kept radio pushing forward, along with the National Association of Broadcasters, who actually pointed out 5 initiatives that have promoted radio technology, which directly transitions into my next slide. Um, the National Association of Broadcasters, or NAB, they have provided 5 initiatives that promote radio tech. NAB Labs, which provide for over-the-air radio innovation and public education. There's also radio-enabled mobile phones built with FM radio tuners. Pretty much, if you have a phone, you have a radio, which was very beneficial for, those trying to promote their content. HD radio, which utilize digital subs carriers to deliver information, just another means of transmitting their signals to listeners. The National Radio Systems Committee, or the NRSC, um, a jointly sponsored NAB and CEA, or Consumer Electronics Association, committee to recommend technical standards for radio receivers. Essentially, it was their job to make sure everything was up to date, and they were also looking for ways to push the technology even further. And then there's the radio data system, which was the final initiative that the NAB provided. It allowed analog FM stations to provide digital data services, such as song title and artist or traffic information. And for those who have ever listened to the radio and have actually seen the song title or the artist pop up on their, the screen or the section on their radio where it says those things, that's because of the RDS. And once upon a time, that was not even wasn't possible, but this technology has allowed it to be so. If you click to the next slide, you will see information regarding the critiques and close calls regarding radio. One of which there's an overall discomfort brought upon the radio industry because of consolidated ownership and cost cutting. For those who do not know, consolidation is essentially, small stations getting, being bought and banding together um, to create one, pretty much big one who was in charge of everything. And essentially the station loses its own identity, becomes a part of something else as opposed to its own separate entity. And of course, cost cutting. I mean, whatever profession you're in, cost cutting, will play a factor. Um, the quality may decline. People may be laid off. Whenever you have to cut costs, there is potential for problems to ensue. Um, there were also close calls in regarding things that and ultimately did work out, but at first there was indifference. Well, the first of which, as we all know today, did all right in the long run. FM broadcasting, it almost died due to lack of support from AM station owners. It ultimately took 35 years to achieve 50% of all radio listening, and it achieved this feat in 1978. Quad FM, or quadraphonic sound, it never quite gained the momentum it needed to become something more. That one ultimately did, of course, fail. And AM stereo, which is still kicking, was touted as in the early 80s the savior in AM's battle with FM. After FM took over, met or became on par with AM, they began to carry that momentum even further and take the lead, for lack of a better term. So those are the following were things that were components to radio that were critiqued, but ultimately allowed to progress forward, except for, of course, Quad FM. Um, Click on the next slide. We'll see the background. We'll provide a little bit more background information on radio regarding its history and things of that nature. Um, the unique thing about radio is that there is no one inventor, no one man or woman created radio and it is his or hers to claim. As a matter of fact, there were various inventors who, added upon layer and layer and layer to build what we have today. However, the book provided two inventors who can be accredited with having the most impact in regards to radio. The first of which, and he's rolling over into his grave. He hears me say this. Guglielmo Marconi is an Italian, died in 1937. He's the most widely known radio inventor and innovator. He's recognized radio's commercial value and improved the operation of early wireless equipment. He has experience when the telegram, back when that was a budding means of communication, and he uses information from there and transitioned it into radio and helped produce radio even further. Along with Marconi was Edwin Howard Armstrong, died in 1954. He was an American. He made his most lasting contributions to radio and electronics technology. He discovered regeneration, the principle behind signal amplification, and he invented the super heterodyne tuner. And this invention was especially important to radios becoming more and more used because it helped produce, a higher performing receiver of the signals that the stations were sending. Um, and this was actually sold at a moderate price, which means people could afford it. If people could afford it, they would definitely buy it. And this helped increase the total homes with radios during his life as a contributor. If you go to the next slide, we'll provide a little bit of information of AM versus FM. AM, amplitude modulation. Um, it varies or modulates signal strength or amplitude. It's the oldest commercial radio station began broadcasting in AM in 1920. About 4 years, it'll be 100 years since AM first started. Um, and the technology advantage of being able to broadcast over a wide coverage area, which is important. One station could reach so many people because of its wide range. FM, on the other hand, or frequency modulation, varies the frequency strength. Commercial FM began around the 1950s, reached listener parity with AM in 1978. Stereo broadcasting ending program simulcasting. Stereo broadcasting ending program simulcasting, which is broadcasting the same programs as AM, helped expand the amount of listeners FM could boast. Um, so while AM reached more people, FM did so, but did so more clearly, and we'll get into that a little bit further. If you click on the next slide, you'll see recent developments, and click on the slide after that. We'll provide some current statistics regarding radio and how people access it, how people obtain it, how they get the content that radio provides. Um, Now, the first two statistics you'll see involve smartphones and digital devices. The first of which says 56% of Americans own smartphones. This was in 2013. In 2015, according to the Pew Research Center, 68% owned smartphones in 2015. And of course, in this year, 2016, that number is likely increased to 70%. Um, the following statistic says 61% of Americans own a digital device, such as an MP3 player or tablet or something of that nature. That number has since decreased because the things that those devices could do, you can now do through your phones. So as the purchase of phones increased, the purchase of the digital device declined. Um, Now I use the book used those stats to also say that percentage of people who use their cell phones to listen to radio in cars increased from 6% in 2010 to 21% in 2013, and almost quadrupled in 3 years, which means that the usage of cell phones and digital devices has increased in vehicles by a lot. Um, and 40% of Americans listen to audio on a digital device each week. Um, and as the book writes, as this number increases, the number of hours and minutes per day spent listening to radio will likely drop. I mean, because you can listen to whatever you want however you want through your device. You do not have that luxury through radio. Um, as of 2012, 55% of 18 and 24-year-olds use mobile devices to play music in their vehicles. And the Pew Research, so this stats is a little different, but it kind of just adds to the direction radio is headed. And that Pew Research Center's Project Excellence in Journalism conducted a survey, and the survey reported that 22% claim radio to have a big impact in the user's life. If five of us were in a room, only one of us could make the claim that radio has had some big impact in our life if we used radio, which provides a little bit of insight as to, today's view and perception of radio. Um, Now, of course, radio, before it was just FM and AM, and then, new means of competition came along the way. So they had to combat it. And they chose to do so with various means. In one instance, they tried to, I guess, fight fire with fire. How do you combat streaming services? With a streaming service of your own. They provided streaming services that helped you stream radio content and programs such as iHeartRadio. You can access whatever station that's on board wherever you are. And TuneIn Radio, which is a similar station as well. It's kind of like a mix between iHeartRadio and a Pandora, where you can kind of just, get a blend of your stations that you'd like to hear. The iPod Nano, remember that one, um, provided an FM tuner, which allows you to, access FM radio just through the Nano. But Apple no longer does that, nor does Android. In fact, neither Apple or Android provide FM tuners in their phones anymore, at least not since the time this came out. Um, there are also attempts from the radio industry to kind of help change that policy. In fact, the NAB attempted to equip music players and mobile devices with radio tuners. This attempt was called Radio Rocks My Phone. However, this attempt was ultimately unsuccessful. Go to the next slide. One of the big competitions FM and AM had to deal with was satellite radio. Essentially, it was a subscriber radio-based service. It was approved by the FCC in 1995. It launched in 2001 by XM Satellite Radio, along with Sirius Satellite Radio. Those two were at first two separate companies. However, in 2008, July, they both merged to form the Sirius XM we know today. Um, Now, satellite stations, and primarily Sirius XM, they use geosynchronous satellites. And geosynchronous essentially means satellites that are synchronized with Earth's rotation. Um, and they use those forms of satellites to, stream the content from wherever the frequencies are being sent. Stream that content to your car, to your radio in there, to your phone, to your laptop, whatever you have subscribed to Sirius XM. They use those satellites to access it through that. Um, and again, that's more information about how many people are even using it. 25.6 million people subscribed to satellite radio by 2013. SiriusXM added 1.6 million over the course of the year. The fee of subscription ranges from $14 to $18, so you can just do the math and imagine the amount of revenue they're bringing in just from that service. One thing that helped us at SiriusXM go forward was their partnerships. Big companies, big names, big leagues, NFL, MLB, NASCAR, NHL, other professional sports, along with star personalities such as Martha Stewart, Oprah Winfrey, and Jamie Foxx, have helped get the message of SiriusXM out and reach out to unique audiences of all different kinds. Um, that's something that FM and AM radio have had to combat with as well. Um, Now, how did these guys even get this information out? That's the big thing. Radio is frequencies. How did they get the frequencies to a receiver? Well, their new digital audio broadcasting transition modes. Go to the next slide. There's digital audio broadcasting system, or DAB, or in-band on-channel system, IBOC. And you go to the next slide. We'll get a little bit of information about that. The DAB uses a hybrid IBOC, or in-band on-channel system, that allows simultaneous broadcasts of analog or sounds being processed into patterns of electrical signals that resemble sound waves. And digital system signals, or digital meaning transmission and reception of sound processed into patterns or numbers, by existing FM stations through the use of compression tech. So they take these signals and convert them into sound waves through various means. The hybrid allows receivers to switch between digital analog systems should the digital signal be lost. So for the receiver that's obtaining the signals being sent from the transmissions, if the digital is lost, the hybrid can pick up the analog instantaneously. Um, and one thing that's helped with FM be so successful is its IBOC system, or in-band on-channel system, is capable of sending near CD quality, CD-like quality audio. So you don't feel like it's radio. It sounds just like a CD, which speaks to the volumes of the quality it produces. And the IBOC also provides for a 96 kilobits per second digital data rate, which helps improve a clear sound. Um, the next slide is just about the current status of radio. Um, where are we now? Terrestrial broadcast. Next slide. Terrestrial broadcasts, or which are done on Earth as opposed to satellite, like satellite Sirius XM, remains a key part to the lives of many Americans. 241 million people heard the nearly 16,000 radio stations in the U.S. in 2013. And that number is pretty on par with the amount of radio stations we currently have today. U.S. advertisers spent 17.65 billion on radio advertising in 2013. However, that was nearly 4 billion less than its total 6 years prior, which does in fact speak to the direction of advertising. People are no longer, as I mentioned in the slide, um, ad drops, people are spending their money in different areas now and online as opposed to just typical radio. Um, and another thing that has been accredited to the decline in advertisement is a soft economy as well. For the next slide, provide additional statistics, just kind of provide a little bit more perspective on again the status of radio. More than 800 million radios are in use in the U.S. More than radio listening at 93 is at 93% in the U.S. population this week. 93% of are listening a week. Um, and time per day is just under 2 hours, but that's more than it once was. So my final question to you all is the following. I guess, will it last? With the recent surge of online audio streaming, satellite radio, and various downloadable audio files, will the standard medium of FM and AM radio be able to ultimately compete? Or are the days of disc jockeys and request shows very much numbered? Um, that's something that things are changing in the world of communications. Radio is of no exception. So what do you guys think? Do streaming, Spotify, Pandora, the aux cord, uh, are those things ultimately going to put an end to your traditional standard FM AM radio, or will FM and AM do what it's been doing its entire life and just fighting back? Thank you for your time. Thank you for uh, watching, and I hope you enjoyed.